Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be talking about the Christopher Ward C9 5-day small second chronometer. This is a watch they released in the last few months that I personally was very, very excited to see. If you're familiar with the brand, we talk about them a lot on the site 'cause they're one of the, best kind of value-driven brands, especially in the last couple of years. They released a in-house movement, if you will. I mean, it's a movement that they work with different partners on. They don't literally make it in there under their own roof, but it's a proprietary movement that they make. So to me, I would absolutely consider it an in-house movement. And it's a really remarkable movement that gives this watch some exceptional qualities, and others in their line too, some exceptional qualities that you really don't find at this price point. Namely, it is a 5-day power reserve, and it's also chronometer rated, and these watches are available under $2,000. So when you combine those two things together for under $2K, you're really talking about a movement in a very different class, and typically something you'd find well over 5K at, say, 8K and up from different brands. So in this watch is very subdued, classic design. You have this movement, but this is I'd say it's their first time doing it with a manual wound sub-second variation. Originally, it was a central seconds with an automatic. They did use this version of the movement actually once before in a very, very limited edition watch that cost substantially more, but that was because it had a piece of an old aircraft in it. But this is their kind of version of it, or rather a watch that's serial produced, and once again, it's available at a very nice price of $1,780 with, like I said again, the SH21 movement, 5-day manual wound with chronometer grade, date, and everything. It's just, it's really something you're not going to find by anybody else at this price point. But what I also really liked about this watch, not only just the movement being, arranged in this way, I think that doing a 5-day manual wound movement makes a lot of sense, more sense even than doing an automatic. Was this is a bit of a design departure for the brand. Typically their C9 watches have a certain look to them, and this one really kind of harkens more to the marine chronometers, kind of very classic, you're talking 17th, 18th century sort of design, John Harrison, things of that nature, and it works just very, very well. And it's almost like the perfect combination of things, a British brand with 5-day chronometer movement, marine chronometer styling at a really accessible price point. So yeah, let's just take a closer look. The case of the Christopher Ward C9 5-day small second chronometer is a style you'll have seen before from Christopher Ward. I believe all of their C9 watches, or most of at least, have this case design. Originally, when the SH21 came out, it was featured in a 43 millimeter case, which is obviously a sizable case, especially for something with a watch with more formal leanings. And I think a lot of people, didn't necessarily love that aspect of it. They have since brought out 40 millimeter versions as well, but this one is a 40 millimeter out of the bat, not available, larger than this, and it's, I think, a perfect size for this style of watch. Marine chronometers are classically, at least, they were built with very large movements. You often see them with the Unitas movements, something like that, old pocket watch concept movements. So they are larger. Obviously, they were once deck watches, so they were clocks, really. So this is all just, symbolic of the idea of a marine chronometer. The 40 millimeters is a very wearable size, and I think it's kind of a nice mix of formal and masculine, and it doesn't feel too big at all. Like, this doesn't feel like a dress watch that's been overinflated or anything like that. And the case itself, I think, is actually it's a very nice, simple design, but it has a very good finishing on it. Once again, speaking to the value at this price point. So you have these fairly straight lugs that do kind of bow out into the case. Once again, it's 40 millimeters actually, and then it's about 48 millimeters lug to lug, and about 12.5 millimeters thick. So yeah, like I said, it's a very kind of a sensible size for a marine chronometer watch. The lugs, they're nice and thick and broad. I quite like the 20 millimeter strap here. It's all very, it's strong looking. It has nice kind of a profile to it. Nothing is as too dainty or anything like that. And you have really nice edges on everything. So the lugs, just great sharp edge where it changes from a polished top surface to a very nice brushed side case here. I love that they did a little bit of a mix of finishing. All polish might have been a little bit too much, just too much gloss. and frankly, just a little touch of extra finishing goes a long way. And the brushing here is good brushing. It's not too coarse, it's not too fine. It has a nice texture to it, and once again, very clean edges, which is the most important aspect. Looking at the crown now, it is about a 6.5 to 7 millimeter crown. Once again, this is a manual wind watch, so you are going to be using that a lot. It feels good in the hand, is easy to grip. On the edge, you do have CW logo here, coming out of it. Once again, all very clean, very simple, well executed. There is a sapphire crystal here, as you would expect. It's domed. Obviously, you would never expect a $1,700 price point to see anything less than that. Flipping the watch over, and boom, you have the SH21 movement in full view here. We'll have a movement section, but just off the bat, you can see it's a very large movement. It's a very different looking movement from other ones you've seen typically. And you see on the case back here, it does say COSC, Certified Chronometer. That, of course, is a very important to note because this has gone through testing to say that it is essentially 99% accurate in several different positions, and that is a very important certification, at least in the Swiss watchmaking world. One thing that's interesting here is you can see they've really kind of maximized or minimized really the case to this movement. You'll see how the case back is held on with these screws that are going through the lugs a little bit. I mean, you can see there's no room for them to get any smaller on this. So you unfortunately won't be seeing the SH21, I don't think, in anything 38 millimeters unless they go with a very different case concept. The dial of the Christopher Ward C9 5-day small second chronometer is, as I said, all marine chronometer in style, very classical, very simple, no fuss, no nonsense at all. And it's clearly just this, you have this one large index here of Roman numerals, and then around that you have a railroad track sort of minute index. It's very reserved, it's very formal in a certain way, but I think very well executed. These kind of things come down to those little details, and I think they nailed it here, which is the typeface, the way the type is very long and slender and almost wispy, but at the same time it's not too overly ornate or kind of decorative. It just works, and obviously it's also still quite legible. The way the train track index ends at the very, just closes everything off, and once again it's a very clean and simple and elegant way to kind of do things. And then at 6 o'clock here you have a large sub-second, and it it is embossed a little bit, and then you have just simple markers going around. Once again, just very simple, clean, to the point approach. And that's just the concept here. It's a style that if you know about and you like, then you'll be drawn to this model of it. If you're not into marine chronometers, not into Roman numerals or anything, this might be the worst thing you've ever seen, because it's just so purely and simply that. They did not try and take it a new direction or anything. They just made it kind of very just spot on. And I really like it. I think they do a lot of stuff with applied numerals at this price point. Things are a little bit more lavish looking, and I think keeping it very minimal, very clean, very reduced in its language just works well, because it just looks sharp. At 3 o'clock you do have a date window. That's the only thing that kind of breaks things up a little bit. Obviously it has a little bit more of a modern feeling to it. I would love to know what this watch would look like without that. I think it would probably still be very attractive. It doesn't bother me though. I mean, it is in place with the other numerals, so it doesn't feel like the window is totally in the wrong location, but it does, of course, kind of break the symmetry of the dial a bit. Now looking at the hands, these really beautiful blued leaf hands here. They're very, very elegant, very thin. I like that they went with this style rather than anything heavier or more of a kind of a brigade style hand. I think this is a smart choice here. And as you see as you move in the light, they do glint with dark blues, and sometimes they look black. It's just very beautiful, and once again the right kind of style, or a sensible style, if you will, for this type of dial. And then the sub-seconds here is just a thin, long stick hand. Gives it kind of more of a little bit more of a technical look there, a little bit more like the kind of tool that this thing really once was back in the the nautical days of the marine chronometer, the deck watch. One thing that I also think would be great to see, so this is a matte dial, and sometimes you do see marine chronometers with gloss dials as an option to kind of more speak to the old enamel days of things. I think it'd be very cool of them to try something like that out, perhaps, and a true enamel no date version for the chronometer purist, even if the price is a little higher. It just would be, I doubt they'll ever do that, but it just would be kind of cool. Looking now at the movement, the SH21, one thing that's great about this version being manual wound is that you get a much clearer view of the movement itself. And like I said before, in my mind, a 5-day power reserve watch just makes sense as a manual wound. You crank it up and then you can let it run for a long time. You don't necessarily need it to be constantly winding, so long as you're mindful of not letting it completely die. So looking at the movement here, I said before, it's very large. That is part of the concept of the movement. They built it to be robust, they built it to be modular, and they also have these two massive barrels here, which clearly are taking up a substantial amount of room, and those are used to obviously store the 5 days of tension, of potential energy that's in here. One thing I think that's very interesting about this watch is the design. You have a single plate on here, and then the decoration. So I think a lot of people mistakenly see this movement and think it's under-decorated. The fact is Christopher Ward went for a very traditional version of decoration, which is a flat sanded approach. And they did then also flat polished screws. So, rather than kind of doing the typical perlage and Côte de Genève, this flat sanding approach is actually, I believe, considered to be harder, as it's really kind of a delicate decoration. Côte de Genève and things like that are actually removing a lot of material, and they can cover up scratches and things like that. If you were to look at very classic watchmaking, guys like George Daniels, you're talking about the kings of watchmaking, you'd see decoration kind of along these lines. It's very kind of pure, simple, clean decoration. Not to say that Côte de Genève is not beautiful or take talent or anything like that, but that was their approach here. It's also very British in its styling. So I like it because I like the story behind it and the concept that they're going for. Is it immediately has a big wow factor? No, it doesn't, but there's definitely a beauty to be appreciated here. You also have nicely beveled edges all around, which glint in the light, which is very attractive. Just now, the movement, Swiss made 28 joules, 27 joules. And this is, like I said, it is a small second version, which you'll see obviously here. So that is an additional module. And it also has a date function, pulling the crown out into first position and winding it counterclockwise will change the date, and then pulling it out to second position. It hacks, as you see here, and you can adjust the time. On the wrist, the C9 wears very, very well. I think the 40 millimeter case was a really smart move for the brand. The 43, I honestly, I remember liking it, but just as my personal taste goes, this is much more in line with some of the size of a watch that I'd wear. And I have a 7-inch wrist here, so you can see how it fits. I think it fits very ideally. The lug to lug isn't too long. The diameter seems appropriate on my wrist size. The thickness doesn't seem too high at all. So it all just kind of fits in place. And I think, moreover, it just looks great at this size. It's definitely formal enough to be a watch that you'd wear to work. You could wear to dressy occasions. It would look good with a gray or a blue suit. While it's not a super thin dress watch, I think this is totally something you can wear in the stead of a more typical small style dress watch. And it has a lot of presence. It's a really beautiful, simple, elegant design. That's kind of what's great about marine chronometers. They have a certain formal, classic look to them, but they're also by nature a little bit larger, a little bit more robust, and they have a certain kind of classical masculinity to them that is very appealing. The watch comes on a faux gator Italian leather strap, as you can see here. So it has this kind of gator print on it, but it's not a print, rather. It's like it's textural. It's stamped in there. You can get it with blue, black, or brown. Then there's also a bracelet version, which is a few $100s more. I think $1,920. It actually looks like a gorgeous bracelet, but for me, the marine chronometers to me just look more appropriate on leather straps. That said, I was a little bit surprised for them that at this price point that they didn't use one of their genuine gator straps. They have very nice gator straps, and you find them on their higher end pieces. I mean, this still looks good. The blue is a little too blue for me. It's like I like the more of a dark navy kind of blue. This just feels a little synthetic looking, if you will. But it is a very high quality strap. Nevertheless, it's very comfortable, beautiful painted edges, nice stitching, nice padding, nice taper. And it comes with one of their Bader style deployant clasps here, which is, I think, the best deployant clasp that's on the market. I mean, it has a very nicely designed clasp here with mix of finishings. So you have polishing and brushing down there. And then what it does, it's very comfortable. I often find deployant clasps uncomfortable. This one, as you can see, it's off center, but what that does is basically keeps all the metal inside of the strap. So there's no metal against your skin pushing. That's what I typically find annoying. So you have metal pushing usually back this way. I find it just very irritating. So this just, it goes on, it closes very easily, it's easy to size. It's just a very simple and elegant version of a deployant that I think works really well, and obviously gives you this kind of seamless deployant look, which is just very clean and elegant, obviously works with the watch as a whole. To wrap up, the Christopher Ward C9 5-day small second chronometer I think is a great watch from the brand. It might be perhaps my favorite watch from the brand at the moment. It has a lot of elements to it that I really like, and I think it's just a really good usage of their new SH21 movement. Kind of shows off really what it was meant for, which is just to create really high-end pieces at an affordable price. While $1,780 isn't throwaway money or by any means, the value that is present here is so high. So I mean seriously, I can't say it enough, but a 5-day chronometer movement at under 2K is pretty unheard of. It's also Swiss made, which obviously adds to its cachet. You can compare this to brands like Nomos and Alpina, who are obviously working in the in-house at an affordable price point realm as well. But I don't think either of them have anything close to a 5-day movement, nor do they go for kind of typical COSC chronometer rating, which once again is one of those things which just like it's a stamp of approval from within Switzerland. So it's, by the virtue that they got this, they're kind of saying, look, this is up against all those other chronometer grade. We didn't just create a movement and put it in a watch. We created a movement that can be held to chronometer spec, and we did it at a really superior price point. So just exceptional. And then it doesn't hurt that the watch is just great looking. Like, I love marine chronometers, and this one really nails that style. If you're into marine chronometers, this is a watch you will like too. It's kind of as simple as that. So please read the full review on Worn&Wound. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you.